thinking the other day, as I always do, my brain never stops going. It's always thinking, thinking, thinking. And I realized I finally made it into the 1%. I just got my medical diagnosis after 15 years of going to different doctors and finally got a diagnosis. And only 1% of people have this condition. So I did it. I made it into the 1%. The United States has a population of 340 million people. When you think of the 1%, you think of the people you blame when you can't pay your mortgage, buy gas, buy food, afford daycare, or any of the costs of living today. The 1% we all typically think of are the wealthy, the top 1% who control 30% of the wealth. We know who they are. Warren Buffett is really a decent guy. Steve actually got to meet him one time years ago when he was working in the business world before he lost his business job during the Great Recession. Warren Buffett was a down-to-earth guy, lives in the Midwest in a tiny home that he's lived in for years, and you would never even know that he's one of the wealthiest people in America today. He himself always says how people of his stature should pay more in taxes, how he pays a lower percent of taxes than his secretary pays. That's one of his famous quotes. Those 1% are the ones we blame. We blame for any issues we have in our life. We say it's because of the 1%. It's the 1% who are ruining our country. The other 1% you think about are the trans people, trans men and trans women. These are the people who are in the process of transitioning to the opposite sex. They also make up 1% of our population. Now, when you think about that, everybody knows what trans means. Everybody knows. Everybody's fighting that. That's all over the news. Fighting to keep them out of schools, doctors' offices, bathrooms, sporting events. Just today, I heard that Idaho is making a law that if a trans person uses the bathroom that is not associated with the sex they were born with, then they will be charged with a felony. A felony is the most serious of crimes. Not a misdemeanor, but a felony. In the comments on places such as Reddit, some people noted that this is a much harsher punishment than rapists or pedophiles get. I personally am not a lawyer. I don't know what they get. But it does seem pretty harsh that if you go into the bathroom that you weren't assigned at birth, then you will be charged with a felony. My personal experience is that I would think they just need to go in and use the toilet and get in and out. Of course, there are going to be some people who try to do things, unknown, unsightly, unheard of things in restrooms, but I don't think they need to pretend to be trans to do that. I've often heard of men going into women's bathrooms. When I first applied for my first job after college and I went to the interview, the bathroom was down the hallway and it was locked. When I asked why it was locked, they said a man had gone into the women's bathroom to do unspeakable things. He didn't have to dress up as a woman. He just went in as a man, and they had to start locking the restroom from that point forward. There's been many stories of men going into women's restrooms through the years. So if that's their purpose, I don't know that they need to pretend to be a woman to just slip into the bathroom. But I was thinking, is 1% a lot or a little? When I was diagnosed, I told my good friends, a couple who we know that we've known for 30 years. At the same time, the husband said, "Oh, that's a lot." And the wife said, "That's hardly any." Is 1% a lot or a little? Nobody's ever heard of my diagnosis, not even doctors. Even the neurologist who diagnosed me barely knows anything about it. I have Chiari's 1 malformation. 1% of the population has this, and I can't find a doctor who's even familiar with it. So 1%, I think, is really a small amount. I'm struggling to find eye doctors, neurologists, anyone who's ever even heard of this. My dentist never heard of it, as well as most doctors who I call to try to get appointments. I've never heard of it, as well as my friends or families. Nobody has heard of Chiari's malformation. That makes up 1% of the population. So when you're thinking about 1% as being a lot, think of Chiari's. Have you ever heard of it? I'd say probably not. There's no research on it. There's no standard method for doing surgery. That's just what I've read as I just finished this book, Conquering Chiari's, that I believe in that book, it said that there's no standard for the surgery. Every physician does the surgery differently. Even measuring how what you have to measure to see if you have Chiari's, my neurologist said he wanted to view the scan himself, as everyone measures it in a different method. The key number you're looking for is 5 millimeters or greater. And I'm not going to get into details. If you're interested in Chiari's, you can search that because I'm not a doctor and it's so complicated. But my malformation was exactly 5 millimeters. And my neurologist says everybody measures it differently. He wanted to measure it himself. He never did do that or get back to me. He told me he only had 30 Chiari patients in 30 years, one a year, and he sends them to the surgeon and never talks to them again. He really knows nothing about Chiari's. So when you think of that 1% as being a lot, think again. Think again. We are making so many laws and rules for the 1% in America when if the population is 340 million, 1% in the whole country would be 3,400,000. Split among the 50 states plus the districts, I don't know what that would be per state, but not a lot. I'd say most of you don't even know a trans person. Now, the point of the video isn't so much on that topic, but it's my Chiari's and the 1% that I'm in Chiari's, and is 1% a lot or a little? I don't know. I think really it's a little, and it's the marketing and effort that have been used to make people aware of things. I hope that we could use that effort to make people aware of Chiari's, because they believe that children are getting Chiari's at a greater rate than adults, which is an odd concept. That makes me think that it's not happening more often. I believe the adults who had it just died at a younger age because they never knew what they had and died from the comorbidities or perhaps a fall or something. Check out our other videos. Hey, we just reached our 3rd anniversary, so if you would subscribe, we'd appreciate it. We're doing all different types of topics from a wide variety. We have our dogs on there. We have housing. We have saving money. I don't know. We've done so many videos in the last 3 years. Check them out. And until we see you again, take it easy.